Hello and welcome to the Work for Change podcast. My name is Jean, spelled like Jean.
And my name is John with the silent H.
And we're coming in hot with episode 29. Courtney Dauwalter, is that how you say
it? You paused because you weren't sure if that was the right number.
No. I was going to say coming in. I was wondering if coming in hot was like inappropriate because it's a girl guest. That was honestly what I was worried about.
Wow.
You know, PC just runs deep inside of me. I am constantly worried if I'm offending or saying the wrong thing. Okay. I honestly was like, was that bad?
No, that wasn't bad. But yeah, so we have Courtney Dauwalter, who this was 100% my idea. I recently found out about Courtney by watching the Joe Rogan podcast or listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. She, and as you guys know, I'm getting into running right now. She is an ultramarathon absolute beast. Like the races that she the races that she runs, there we go, they're pretty much anything over a marathon distance we go into it a little bit, but that's what an ultra marathon is. But the marathon that, really kind of put her name out there was in 2017. She ran the Moab 240, which is a 238 mile run or race. And she got first place in that race. Second place did not come until 10 hours after her, and it was a guy. So she beat all the guys and all the women by 10 hours. And
she is the Sam Briggs of the ultra marathon
absolutely world. And even more though, even more so, because she is, I can't even think of really a bigger name than hers. And so it's not even about that, but it's incredibly exciting that she decided to come on this podcast, which is obviously not an ultra running podcast, but we love all aspects of fitness. And but
also like what she says, like transfers over, like everything 100%. Everything she was saying transfers over to whatever sport, however you want to get your fitness in, like it translates.
Yeah. And so she was actually also the 2018 Ultra Runner of the Year, which is I'm sure a really cool accomplishment. I mean, this is somebody that I was selfishly wanted to get on the podcast, literally just because I wanted to be able to talk to them.
Yeah.
And it worked out. So it was a really cool conversation. Jean learned a lot about running, which was good because he had no idea.
Yeah, you're supposed to do it one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, and stop complaining is a big one too, John.
Yeah.
So, but it was a lot of fun. This is a really fun podcast. We go into a lot of stuff. I think there's a lot of really good nuggets, especially about mindset and about just, understanding like what the human body is actually capable of. Really good.
And what the human mind is
That's the main
of
thing.
Overcoming. Yeah.
It's the main thing.
So we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Let us know if you guys like it, either by giving us a nice review on iTunes or by leaving us a comment on YouTube, because that is the easiest way that we can continue the conversation from continuing what we talked about on the podcast, is just continuing it in the comments. My name is at Jean Glaude on Instagram if you want to tag us when you're listening to it.
Yep, and I am at Obese to Beast. And again, she regularly runs more than a marathon all the time. Okay? So I just put it out there. That is unbelievable. That is unreal. There are times where during these ultra marathons, they're running through the night for sometimes 3 days straight. Okay? I'm just trying to put it out there. Like, that's unbelievable. I ran for 3 hours and I was done. I didn't want to do any more. To run for 3 days.
Yeah, that actually.
3 days.
It's weird to imagine.
I'm trying to really hammer it in. 3 days, and you're sleeping for maybe out of all 3 days, 5 hours, maybe.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So we hope you guys enjoy episode 29.
3 days
of the Work for Change podcast.
3 days.
Bring it on.
All right. So Courtney, where in the United States are you coming at us from?
Colorado. I'm in Golden, Colorado. It's just west of Denver.
Just west of Denver? So we actually have a friend of ours that recently moved to, was Denver, right?
No, Boulder.
Boulder. Okay.
How far away is Boulder?
Boulder is like 20 minutes, 30 minutes north of me.
Oh, okay,
nice.
Cool. He just moved there, and I actually recently messaged him. I was like, I'm gonna come there because I've recently really gotten into running myself just in general, but as of very, very recently, I've gotten into trail running and doing stuff like that. So I know that the trail running there is awesome. So I was like, I'm gonna come there and hang out with you. Did you always live there, or did you move there because of the trail running and the running scene?
I grew up in Minnesota, And then I came out to Denver for college. I went to the University of Denver. And then, slowly kept migrating a little bit farther west because it gets you closer to the trails. So, but we're only about, I think, 15, 20 minutes from downtown Denver here in Golden. So not too far west yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I figured it would be good for you to it'd be nice of you to kind of explain what it is that you do, because of the people that listen to our podcast, a lot of them are just into fitness in general, whether that be CrossFit, bodybuilding, just going to a regular gym, running. A lot of people do running, but if you can kind of explain what ultra running is to people that might not have any idea, right?
Yeah. Oh boy. So ultra running is running really, really, really far. In order for it to be categorized as an ultra marathon, it just has to be longer than a normal marathon length of 26.2. So typical ultra distances are 50K, which is 31 miles, 50 miles, 100K, and then 100 miles. And then you can get up to 200 or 240 mile races as well, which are the ones that I generally prefer. The longer, the better. That
is crazy to me. So, coming from both of us, we when I was in high school, I was really overweight in high school, right? And for me, the mile was, for some reason, I'm not sure if it was the same for you, but for us, we would have the mile day. So it would be one day out of the month where you had to run the mile. And for me, I absolutely dreaded it because they pretty much had you could call it a time cap on it, which was 20 minutes. So you need to complete it in 20 minutes. And I couldn't, no matter how hard I tried, there was just, and then eventually, after failing so many times, I just wouldn't try. It'd be oh, it's mile day. Okay, I'm just gonna walk, and I don't even care. So the thought of
sick or something.
Yeah, I got to a point where I enjoyed being really lazy and like making a joke out of it. So like kids would think it was cool. But in my head, I was like, no, I'm just actually that lazy and I don't want to run. So like the thought of, for me, when I first started like kind of doing the running, because I'm going to be doing my first marathon here in like a month, right?
So cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I ran like 8 miles this morning and I was just like thinking, I was like, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to what like Courtney's doing, or just even just a marathon in general. So I've been learning a lot about like pacing, right? So when I was heavier, that's not a term that I understood, because like for me, it was, if I wasn't walking, if I was doing anything faster than walking, that was, my heart rate was through the roof, like 200 beats per minute, probably something, that, there was no such thing. So once I started, like, because I started the running after I've been doing fitness for a while, I realized, there's a huge difference between running, for me, like a 8-minute mile is fast, like that'd be me going pretty hard, and then like a 12-minute mile, like your heart rate is a completely different animal. So yeah, I've learned a lot about like running and like getting into that. But
so on my end, the most I've ran is like 2 miles. I don't even think I've done that consistently or consecutively. Like it was like in a workout that had like 400-meter runs or something, and so it accumulated to that. So it's kind of funny hearing him geek out about all this stuff, because it's stuff that I have literally no clue about. But it's like working in close proximity with him, I'm hearing about it all the time. But before we get way too into that and deep into that,
I could get into it.
I saw him. He was starting to geek out, and so I needed to like pull the reins for a second. What is your like maybe like your fitness story, but then also has it's come into running now, like ultra marathons? Like how did that start for you? What is that journey like?
Yeah. I mean, in elementary school, we had the mile day too. And I kind of loved it. I loved pushing myself and that feeling of like I was in control of exactly how much like effort I put in and then what that resulted in, which I thought was kind of cool. And then that led into, junior high and high school, just cross country and track and being active in all sorts of endurance-based sports. And then in college, still competing and staying in the endurance field for sure. Always the longer stuff always seemed better suited for me. And then after college, I just wanted something. So I signed up for a road marathon just to have an outlet, a reason to, put in those miles every day. And from there, it just snowballed. Before the marathon, though, like, I didn't know I could survive 26.2 miles. Like, that seemed so far. And I think I even was texting my parents, like, on marathon morning, like, hey, see you later. Thanks, thanks for the ride, Yeah. Because it seemed like an impossible thing to cover 26.2 miles with your own feet. That seemed crazy. But then, sure enough, finished it. And after maybe 24 hours of, feeling complete, like, pain and that I would never do another one again, it flipped over really quick to like, oh, sweet, we got to do another one of those.
I hope I have that same feeling.
Maybe not immediately, but it'll roll over for sure within 24 hours, I bet. I can't wait to hear if it does.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated for sure.
Yeah, please do. But then basically it just became like, well, shoot, if 26.2 miles is possible, then what else is there? And I encountered then the ultra running world where there's, races in the 200 mile range. So basically it just snowballed. So I tried a 50K and then tried a 50 mile and I kept surviving them and I kept.
Well, I didn't die. So let's go longer. You've only ever done one road marathon or did you do a few after that too?
I did one more. I did two.
You did two, and then so you immediately were like, okay. So I think it shows that you like you said, you enjoy the longer distance. So instead of being like, I want to get under 2 hours, I want to get under 3 hours. That would be insane. That would be a world record. Is what that would be. Yeah. But like, I want to get under 3 hours or whatever your time was, right? You were like, instead of that, you gravitated towards, I want to go longer. I want to, that's interesting.
My curiosity was definitely like, what else is there? What else can we do? If we can cover this much, then we must be able to go farther than that.
And then, so what was the first ultra? How was that experience for you?
It was cool. It was a 50K, just at a local park. I lived in Texas at the time, and it was just a looping course. So I think it was only like maybe a 6 or 8 mile loop through the woods of this park. So it was like very much dipping my toe into trail running because it wasn't, like rugged mountain trails like you might picture, or if you pull up pictures on Google, you're going to see like some pretty extreme stuff. It wasn't like that. It was just a really lovely day in the park. Mm-hmm. And the people were super chill and like the aid stations, everything was much more like calm feeling than a road marathon and smaller and more intimate. And I really loved that. Mm. Yeah. So then I wanted the next thing after that.
Is there like a change in training style? If you're like, so your first marathon you were running to complete, right? Like just, I want to do this. The versus like I'm running to win this marathon, right? Like I'm so noob to running. I don't know anything about it. So like, do you just run more and that's how you get better at running? Like, you're just like, I need to run faster and that is my strategy of winning? Or like, what's the change in running to complete versus running to like win?
For marathons, I don't think I can speak to that because I was just completing those. Okay. I was just doing, pretty low miles during weekdays when I was working. And then I would try and, get in some longer stuff on the weekends. Uh-huh. But I know some marathon training plans are super intense. Okay. And I don't want to speak to any of that because I didn't go that direction at all.
But in your like specific races, so your ultra marathons and stuff like that, do you have like, if I want to do well at this event, I need to hit this kind of split? Is that how that works, or?
Yeah, usually it's so long that the splits, like the tiny zoomed in view of each section of the course is less important than just overall like putting together as many efficient miles as you can based on the terrain, based on, a lot of times in these ultra marathons, you end up throwing up for a while, or
for a while, and that's true. Like I've been watching tons of documentaries, and almost everyone that like I've seen, like you're in it, you're like, yeah, I threw up a couple times, but I feel good now. And I'm just like, if I did that, I'd be like, I'm done, towel, something's wrong, I need to go to the hospital, like I'm dying right now. So I think it's so different, because like for you, right, Jean, you don't know too much about the running, but like
nothing about
so
running.
I'm newer to this too, but like I've gotten into it because when I get into something, I get obsessed, right? So when I first got into running, I was watching a ton of marathon content, regular road marathon, stuff like that. But then once you start, like on YouTube, once you start watching certain types of videos, more videos pop up on the side, right? So then I'm seeing like videos of like
in the rabbit hole.
Exactly. And then I'm seeing videos of like 100-mile race, Badwater, or Western States, which is like a really popular 100-mile race. And I'm just like, 100 miles? What the heck? And so then I started watching that stuff. So then I started getting into like the trail running scene. And from what I've noticed, like the marathon, and this isn't me trying to badmouth anything because, again, I don't know too much, but from what I've seen, like the trail running scene, like I think I'm really gravitating a lot towards it. Like right now I'm training for the marathon. I'm going to do it. I'm excited. I want to do that. But I've already kind of made the decision for once I'm done with the marathon, I think I want to do more trail running just because I think for me personally, because I'm a bigger guy, I weigh like 200 pounds. Putting a ton of miles on just cement and asphalt, it hasn't been kind to my feet and to like my legs. But so I went on a trail run yesterday. It was like my first real trail run. I got like real trail shoes and stuff, right? And that was like a lot of fun because I think the appeal for a lot of people is like when you're trail running, one, you have to be self-sufficient. That's like a big part of it, right? Like you have to bring your own stuff. You have to have your own water. You can't rely on anything else. But you get to see like such cool things,
Oh man.
And then the terrain changes so much, so you're going uphill, and your mile time might be 30 minutes because you're literally hiking up a mountain. But then once you get to the top, you're like, oh, that felt awesome, and now you get to run fast down the hill, So from what I'm geeking out again, but it seems like it's two completely. The reason I was saying that is because it seems like it's almost like in running, it's two completely different worlds. Not saying one's better than the other; they're just different. Would you agree with that at all? Or?
Yeah, for sure. And there's some athletes who can kind of dabble in both at the same time. And having the leg speed to be really successful in road marathons surely means that your engine then is, super strong, and you need a strong engine for trail running as well. So it can translate back and forth, I think. But in general, like, someone going out for a trail run doesn't care necessarily about their mile splits, because you're just reacting to the terrain and you're taking the day as it comes, which might, look very different over the course of 5 hours or 6 hours or 12 hours
or 3 days,
Casual.
So when you did the Moab 240, was it 2017 when you had first overall?
That's correct.
So the first time I ever actually heard of, I'm assuming this is very, very much for a lot of people. First time I ever heard your name and your story was the Joe Rogan podcast. When he was like, I love the whole podcast. He's just like trying to find out what's the demon inside of you, and you're just like, I just like to run, man. Like I just love running. I don't know, but he was like so obsessed with you because when you finished, right, you beat everyone, men and women. You were first overall, and then the second place person came in. Was it 10 hours after you, basically, or something like that? That's unbelievable. Yeah. Like, and then he was making tons of jokes like, you could have went to sleep and had like a nice meal and then came back. And I was like, from what I've seen with the ultramarathon thing, it's like it's really less about competing against the other people. It's like you're trying to put, like you said, put the best days together in a row that you can. To hopefully I wouldn't even say, maybe for you to come out on top, but for most people it's like to come out healthy and like feeling like you put together a few good days.
Yeah, left everything you could out there. Mm-hmm. And yes, some of those moments are going to look a lot worse than others, but just riding the waves. Ultra running is a ton of just like problem solving on the fly. So things come up and you figure out a way to move through them, because that's what you have to do in order to keep moving towards the finish line.
And then for some people that maybe have never really heard about like how ultra running works, I know that it's technically what would be the word, like one person sport, a single person sport, because you're the only one out there running, but you have like a whole crew that's helping you through the races, right? So could you kind of explain like how that works, like what each person maybe does, and then like does your crew change from say a 50K race to the Moab 240 where it's 240 miles?
Yeah, definitely. 50K and 50-mile races, often you won't have a crew, just based on the amount of time that it takes to complete it. It's not super necessary, but there are aid stations out on course, just like a road marathon or half marathon or 10K even have the aid station with the water cups lined up for you. They have those on these trail races as well, but usually they're more like a buffet line of snacks. So it's not just like water or Gatorade. You've got like every type of drink you can imagine. You have sweet and salty snacks. You have hot food. You have, popsicles if it's hot outside. So tons of food options. Some people call it an eating contest with some running mixed in.
Well, because that's one of the biggest hurdles is right, making sure you can eat and like you can keep the food down, right?
Yeah. And you never know what you're going to be craving. Like you can fine tune it over the years, like what your body tends to feel like during certain hours or miles, but it's hard at first to know because you're not used to, taking in solids while you're running. That's crazy. But yeah, then when the races get longer, oftentimes you'll have crew people who are just your buddies or, family who are willing to give up their weekend to basically drive all to the aid stations and meet you with stuff that you want. So there's still the whole aid station buffet line, but then they've also got maybe like a change of shirt or different socks or, reload your pack with snacks that you prefer or something. And they're super helpful and usually just a good like spirit boost as well. You've been out in like the wild for 20 hours seeing a familiar face. You're like, okay, I can speak English still and like I haven't
you just
totally
come speaking a different language. What happened to you out there? Or the story when you saw the cello players out on the course hallucinating.
So yeah, that's got to be like those aid stations are probably like, are those good like markers for you? Kind of like I can make it to this spot. Like doesn't matter how much the rest of the run has or whatever. Like I can make it here. I'm gonna see someone. And then I was watching. Like while I was, again, he's the one who told me about you, about everything, and it's just insane. And so I was watching, I don't remember what it was, but it was a video, and you have like pacers too, right? Like people who will run with you? Or do they run like a portion of it? Like what does that look like?
A portion. So as the races get longer, oftentimes pacers are allowed in the later sections of it.
Oh, okay.
So depending on the race logistics and all sorts of pieces, pacers might be allowed in a 200-mile race from like mile 100 on or something. Or in a 100-mile race, you might be able to pick up a pacer at mile 75 to the finish. And then they can change out at different aid stations. So you might be able to have a couple different pacers in it. Basically, the point of it often is just safety, because usually it's in the nighttime when they'll have you have pacers or very far into the race where you are becoming like a little delirious maybe.
Seeing cello players.
So basically it's just a safety reason, and they can, help. They're another set of eyes to watch for the course markers because the course is usually marked in these races, and basically someone to share the experience with then and laugh with afterwards of like all the ridiculous things you said while you were out there.
So I don't know if this is like giving away secrets, then feel like, your competitive advantage, then feel free to not say anything. Again, I'm completely oblivious. But what do you look for in your pacer? Do you want them silent running beside you? Do you want someone to be able to talk to? Like what helps you out from your pacer
It's a good question, and it totally depends. In the race, even, it might change as like, I'm riding like highs and lows and having good patches and bad patches. So my pacers are usually just my really good friends who I have no problem saying like, hey, can we be silent for a while?
Yeah.
Let's turn the radio off, or like, hey, can you tell me some stories, or like, what have you been doing today, and distract me for a while. But yeah, for me, it's just people that I like spending time with already. And so this is another way I get to share experiences with.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
I feel like it would be like if you for some reason asked me to be a pacer, right? I don't know why you'd do that, but say you did.
Let's just say you want to lose.
Yeah.
And you asked him to be a pacer.
I feel like I would feel a lot of pressure. Like, because like, okay, so say you're running and God forbid something happens to the pacer, right? And they end up getting injured and you're like, I gotta go. I don't know what to tell you. Or do you stay with has that ever happened? Like, maybe not to you, but to someone that you know?
Yeah. I've had a couple instances where, like one race, the pacer wasn't able to stay with me for that section.
That was going to be me. Like, what happens then?
But then you just keep going, and they go to the next spot where the crew picks them up anyways. So that's fine. And another instance, my pacer was running behind me, and I heard them trip and fall. And I'm like, what the heck, are you okay? And, they come stumbling back out of the bushes with, like, sticks in their hat. And, like, but we were racing, we're in, like, full on, like, we got to get to the finish line mode. So he's, like, doesn't say anything about being injured. He's like, just go, keep going, keep running. I'm like, all right, dude, are you fine? He's like, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
He stays with me, doesn't say a peep about it again. And we get to the finish line, and he broke his wrist when he fell. But he didn't say it. Oh, my
gosh.
Well, because it's like...
his wrist was like a cantaloupe.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, it makes sense, like, because I feel like, one, if you're asked to do that, like I'm sure you never say this, but it's part of the job that, like, you're there to help, but you're not there to be in the way, obviously, right? So, like, you want to... I'm assuming you wouldn't be like, you're in the way, you need to stop, but, like, that's how I would feel, is like, this isn't about me. Like, it doesn't matter if my wrist is broken. This isn't my race. I'm here to help, But yeah, it's interesting. Whenever, because I've been watching other documentaries, and I would see the pacers, and I would just think, what if I was that person? And I would be like, that'd be terrifying. I feel like at some points.
If there was an instance though where like they fell and they were legitimately hurt, then I mean these races, they're not like, you don't leave your buddy behind in the woods then just to finish the race. Like I would stop and the race might be done, but I would stay with my friend who was there to help me if they were seriously injured. Yeah. Like that's a no-brainer for sure.
And I think that kind of goes into another thing, like with the ultra marathons. I remember I was watching an interview that it might have been Joe Rogan, but he was talking about like prize money, and a lot of them there's like no prize money, right? It's you guys are just doing this to really challenge yourself, and then I guess bragging rights if you want to call it that. But like you're not doing it because like, oh, there's $1 million on the line here. It's like, no, we're doing this because we enjoy it.
Yeah, we like to suffer in the woods and mountains.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Wait, am I selling this to you? Are you signing up already?
Yeah, I was gonna sign up.
Yeah, why are you canceling your marathon right now? So, okay, we kind of talked about the fact that you were on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is awesome. Congratulations, I guess that's what you say about being on that. But like, what?
It's nothing like the Work for Change podcast.
Yeah, though. Nothing like this one. I get it. Just wait till you see what happens after this one. But what? Like, how does training or life, like, how does that change, right? Like, if you're not doing marathons for this huge prize purse, a lot of the times ultra marathons and stuff, you guys are within your community, but now you get exposed to like something like the Joe Rogan podcast where it's people do like MMA, don't care, comedy, whatever. Like there's so many different people who are listening.
It's the biggest podcast in the world.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the biggest podcast in the world.
So what changes for you, like, or like, is there increased exposure? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you feel like? How long ago were you on it, first of all? How long ago was that podcast?
It was after the Moab 240,
Okay.
so it was back in like October 2017.
Uh-huh. So like, what's changed since then? Like being on that, and
I mean, I met you guys.
that's a
the main
huge
thing,
one.
main
Yeah.
thing.
Besides that one, obviously.
I mean, it's been cool to connect with people through that who maybe weren't aware of ultra running and now, are maybe thinking of trying to start building up or try a half marathon and then get out on the trails a little bit. So I think it's been just a really cool way to, I don't know, feel like you're meeting more people from around the world and maybe getting to share a little bit in their journey that they're going to go on, which is fun.
I think it's been, and I don't even think this wasn't like some plan that you had, but like after being on that podcast and getting the exposure, because you weren't even really on social media before that very much, right? So so everything for you has kind of like ramped up as far as like social media is concerned. But I think that, and again, I don't think this is like some big plan of yours, but you're a very good advocate of the sport, I guess is the best way to say it. You seem like a very nice person. You're very like, I just work hard and I enjoy running and that's what I do. You're not like overly serious to a point where like someone like me would be like, oh, maybe I don't want to get into this. It's like, oh, it's if she can do it, maybe I can. When it's actually a trap because you're like, I'm only 10 miles in. Courtney, she's 40 miles ahead right now. Like, what happened here?
Yeah.
A trap.
Yeah, it's a trap. It's what it is.
Yeah.
You're a trap for the ultra running community. I don't think you understand.
Well, thank you.
So I'm curious, with the training that you do, I know, again, through reading and stuff, you don't really have like a plan, at least from the last thing I saw. Would you say there's like a weekly mileage that you hit, or so if you have a race, because you do a pretty good amount of races a year, are there like certain ones that you're like, this is the race, say it's the Moab 240, right? The Moab 240, that's what I'm training for. And if there's a couple of 50K races or like, just shorter distances compared to 240 miles, like, do you sometimes just do those to see how you're feeling, how like the crew is working? And then like, how does your training look kind of going up to that?
Yeah. So I don't follow a training plan still. Every day, I don't even know the mileage that I'll hit or, what kind of terrain I'll choose. That's kind of chosen when I leave the door every day.
That's cool.
But in general, I hit 100 or 110 miles per week. And mostly on trails once they've melted out in Colorado. So we are now getting some dry trails finally, which is exciting. And then, I'll sign up for races that are more like training races for me. So I'll train right through them and just basically try and empty the tank and bash the legs a little bit to springboard off of it, hopefully. And throughout the year, maybe I'll choose like 3 or 4 races that I'm like really psyched about showing up fresh for. And then I'll do like a classic, tapering as you get closer to it and trying to show up as rested as possible.
So when when there is like snow on the ground, are you running in the snow or are you like on a treadmill? Like, would you, I don't even know what do you do then?
We're in San Diego. We don't know what snow is.
Yeah.
I know.
We have literally no clue.
I'm sorry I brought it up.
It makes us anxious.
Yeah. I saw you start to sweat.
Maybe I won't go to Colorado.
In the winter, it's roads, it's treadmill if you need to, or sometimes we'll have a streak where the trails get packed down enough with people traveling over them where it's still fine to run on even though they're covered in snow, or they'll melt out because we have a beautiful sunny streak of weather. So it's a little bit of everything. Or, we've got great skiing here. Cross-country skiing is a great aerobic activity to keep you in shape in the winter months. So plenty of options to make it work no matter where you are, I think.
Yeah, like the different cross-training options and stuff like that. I've kind of had to dabble with that a little bit because, like I said, my feet. So I've been like, okay, I guess I'll do a lot of rowing or I'll do a lot of, there's a bike that we have that I'll use a lot. So, that makes sense.
Just working on that aerobic base, keeping that going.
Trying to.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say there are people like me out there. Let's just pretend.
Yeah, never.
And they don't really run, but they're interested in running, especially like, trail running and stuff like that as an excuse to get outdoors, but also like increase their fitness. And you say that you've been able to kind of be an ambassador for the sport, like people who never heard about it, right? Like, what would
Said
you?
that.
We said that. We said that about you, and now you have to accept it.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? Like first steps, running, like getting into this. Like obviously, you're not going to go out and run a marathon, but like
don't look at me like that.
But like
you just got to go full bore into it, man. You know?
Isn't that what it is? You just start running.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. If you want to get into running is going to be a part of that.
Dang it.
But,
so I'm out. All right. Go ahead. No, just kidding. Just kidding.
You have to be patient.
Okay.
So you I don't think need to ramp it up in a crazy amount. Patience is important, and it might be a long game. Like you might have to look like 3 months or 6 months or 12 months out for like where you actually want to be, depending on where you're starting. And then I think consistency is huge and not making excuses. If this is really going to be a thing that you want to do, you got to get out the door no matter what. And you got to put in the time no matter what. Mm-hmm. So like building that like mental strength by not letting yourself have excuses, I think is just as important as building the physical strength of like, it's going to hurt to run 2.1 miles if you've been doing 2 miles.
Yeah.
But you add that 0.1, and then the next day you get out the door and you get after it again, and you just keep on building. But it can be a slow build. Like there's nothing wrong with that for sure.
Yeah, I think that I would say even like for me, one of the things like about running is you think, running is like, people that are in relatively good shape or you're not like super overweight for like, because when I was super overweight, running was very hard, any distance. But now it's like, I can run. So you don't realize how difficult it is to run that amount and how hard it is actually on your body. Like, because you think, running is just running. It's super safe because everyone's like, we do CrossFit. Everyone's like, CrossFit's super dangerous, so you're going to hurt yourself. But like, if you run too many miles, you will hurt yourself. If you're not smart about it, like if you don't ramp up slowly and you decide to do a marathon out of nowhere, like you're probably gonna have some issues, And for me, it's given me so much more respect because there was like before you're a runner, if you're not someone that does any running, you see marathon and you see 100 miles, and you're like, whatever, it's the same thing. It's a lot. It's more than I'll ever run. But now that I'm running, it's like I see marathon, I'm obviously flabbergasted. I think it's amazing. But then I see 100 miles, and I'm just like, it's crazy that people like you are able to do those races and stay relatively healthy because of the training that you're doing, all the miles you're putting in before the marathon, before the ultra marathon, to stay healthy. It's insane what the body can do. It really is.
Yeah, our bodies are amazing, and our brains, I think, are really amazing. Like when you feel that physical pain, you can keep pushing as long as you stay tough in your head. I mean, not if there's like a bone sticking out or something crazy.
You have like crazy stress fractures or something like that. Maybe take it off.
Yeah, like your muscles hurting because you ran farther than you've run before. Well, of course they're gonna hurt a little bit, but that's when you can just stay tough in your head, I think, and push one more block just to do it, because I think that can pay off huge in the mental and the physical aspects of getting to your goal, whatever that is.
So you would say, or would you say, not putting words in your mouth.
It's a trap.
Yeah. Like how much mindset is a lot bigger than people realize then. It's kind of what you're getting at. Like it's not just going out and running. Like you have to train your mind to go through those long runs, right?
I think so. Yeah. Because if you create a habit of making excuses or finding, when it gets hard, like your brain is going to start to, want to grasp at any little straw that gets thrown its way, where it's like, oh, my foot hurts a little bit. Well, I'll take that and now I'll quit. Or oh, my stomach hurts, or it's raining suddenly, like you'll want to look for the easy way out always. But if you never form that habit of like taking the easy road, or you work to build the habit that's opposite of that, I think it's a huge part of running, but it's also just a huge part of like whatever goal it is, you know?
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be running at all.
So I'm sure you get this question all the time, but we're just going to ask it anyway. When it starts to suck, like what's going through your mind, right? Like when it, like I'm sure you get that all the time, but like in the CrossFit world, okay, it's stuff like pick up the barbell before you want to, you know, which is a very specific thing. Like, okay, give me 5 seconds, I'm going to pick it up. It's like, no, go right now. You know, like go sooner than you think you're ready. So like little cues like that is what I'm thinking about in the middle of a workout. But like with ultra running, like what goes through your mind when it really sucks? What are the things that kind of help you pull through?
Yeah, and sometimes it's similar, but it's just like left foot, right foot, left. There's no barbell for us, you know, but we're just forward motion. So focusing on the tiniest version of that, just one more step, or you know, if you can like one more tree, one more mile, one more aid station, whatever the target is that keeps you moving forward. But doesn't overwhelm you with the big picture of like, oh, I still have 90 miles left, or whatever it is. Or sometimes it's like distracting yourself entirely from the task at hand. So thinking about not running things, or a song or a joke, or, you know, whatever. So sometimes it's like focusing really intensely on that specific moment. And sometimes it's trying to not be there at all and like escape.
I feel like one of the biggest like no-nos that you could do almost with like an ultra marathon is thinking about the finish line way too early. Because I feel like if you're thinking like, even if it's 30 miles, right? I still have to do 30 miles. That would be incredibly daunting. Because like the longest run I've gone on so far is 16 miles, right? And when I started, I was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on mile by mile. But for some reason, you know, it starts off good. I get like 10 miles in, I'm like just focusing on the miles. But then once I have 4 miles left to go, I'm like, I have 4 miles left to go. It just, my mind goes there every time. Yeah. It's always like, I can't focus on the mile anymore. It's like, I just want to be done. Because, you know, for me, being outside for 2.5 hours, like that's a long time to run, you know, going from almost like maybe the longest run was 40 minutes before that, you know? And so it's definitely like, I can't even fathom what that must be like times 50, you know, or whatever. Like that has to be.
It's the same though. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same. It's just for a little bit longer, but it's still breaking it down into whatever digestible part you can take in right then. So like when you're standing at your marathon start line, what are you going to be thinking of? Yeah, 1 mile? Yeah. Or like the first water stop maybe, or, you know?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to try I'm definitely going to try. One, I've worked on this today. First thing I'm going to focus on is not going out too hot, because every long run I've gone on, I'm like, this feels so good, dude. This is like super easy. Everything's good. And then I look at my split times when I'm done, because towards the end I'm like dying, right? I look at my split times and they've gone from like 10-minute miles down to like a 13-minute mile. I'm like, that's probably not the best. I should probably try and like even that out. So I'm going to be thinking about that. And then, just like mile by mile. I think that's hopefully my plan. And I'm thinking for me with the marathon, it'll be a little bit easier. I mean, it's a longer distance, but because there'll be so many people there, you know. And so that's one of the other things about ultra runs. Like most of the time when you're on the trail, like there's nobody that's there. For the road marathons, like because in San Diego it's like it's a pretty big event here. There's gonna be people almost lining the whole course, you know. So I'm like so exciting. I'm looking forward to having that. But when it's like an ultra marathon, obviously you have the aid stations and stuff like that. But it's not like you have during the whole course people are like, keep going. When you're like when you've been walking for 2 hours straight and you're just like, I can't even imagine doing more of this. Those aid stations become just beacons though of joy, you know, like all the people and all the calories that you know can boost your system. So they definitely it's a target and you just got to get there no matter what it looks like. So I'm curious, obviously we've talked about like how all the races you've done super well in, but has there ever been like a race that maybe you ended up having like to drop out of, or you weren't able to finish, that maybe when you actually finally dropped out or whatever, you were like, you look back on and you're just like, I could have kept going? Or are there races like that? What would be an example of that?
Yeah, so my build, like when I got into ultra running, I did that 50K, and then I did a 50 mile, and then the next one I chose was a 100-mile race, because I was curious, what else can we do? And in that 100-mile race, I got to, it was hurting like it does, like after 30 or 40 miles, and I got to like mile 55 maybe, and it was physically hurting so bad. I was just hiking at that point, but I mentally threw in the towel. Then I gave up, and instantly I was thinking, like the 100-mile distance must not be for me. I wasn't made to cover this distance, so I'm gonna quit at this next aid station and go home and maybe stick with the 50-mile distance or whatever. But I went home and basically was just disappointed with myself afterwards, because it was a total mental sabotage where I gave up on myself in my head. Physically, of course, it was going to hurt. You've been running for a day, but that's when the mental part kicks in. And I didn't know that the mental part was a part of running at that point. So that kind of lit a fire, but it also helped me understand a little bit more about running and ultra running specifically, where the mental game is huge, and not giving up on yourself is crucial. Even if you're, puking in the bushes for an hour straight, you don't give up on what's happening. You just problem solve it and keep moving.
What, okay, so you were saying after running for a day, obviously you're hurting, stuff like that. So I would probably agree with that if I had ever done that. But
this is Jean after running 800 meters.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously running that much distance does take a toll on your body. It is hard on your body. Do you have people who kind of go that's dangerous, you shouldn't be doing that? How does that, what is the dissenters? Are there a lot? I keep on talking about CrossFit, but that's the training that I know. Everyone says CrossFit is dangerous. That is the normal thing you hear, is that CrossFit is dangerous. And so you just kind of have to be thanks, dude. Thank you for randomly caring about me. Thank you for caring so much that you need to let me know. But is there that community? Is there that, or not community, but is there that dissension with ultra marathons and stuff like that?
Yeah, there's concern for runners' knees all the time, So I feel the same way, though, just grateful that someone cares about the longevity of my knees.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know. Ultra running is a little bit more new, where 200-mile races, for instance, are very new. So we don't really know the long-term effects of that.
Yeah.
So I don't have science to argue it, but I'm a perfectly healthy 34-year-old. So I'm going to keep using my legs and my body how I find the most joy in life, and figure it out if that becomes a problem, I guess. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
I got you. So I'm curious. I know, again, with all of the research I've done, I think I know kind of how you're going to answer this, but I know the people that are listening to the podcast are going to be curious about this, and it's food. Boy. It's about diet, right? So if you could go, so say you went on a run that was, 20 miles or something like that day, what would your diet look like that day?
It's a training run?
Yeah, so just a 20-mile training run. I don't know if that's too long. I don't really know, but...
No, that's fair. In general, my day starts with coffee. So multiple cups of coffee. Some handfuls of cereal, usually straight out of the box.
Nice.
And then I'll go. I might have nutrition with me on the run or not, depending on if I intended to run 20 miles or it was more spontaneous than that.
Oops, I got lost. Oopsies.
Yeah. Or oops, I feel really good. Let's keep going. And then afterwards, maybe bananas or peanut butter or fruit or yogurt, beer potentially.
Yeah.
Nachos are a
one of the
staple
favorites
of my diet. Yeah. I mean, nachos and candy and beer are the main food groups on the food pyramid.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty
sure,
sure. I
definitely.
think they switched the food pyramid up recently,
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
the bottom is now, for sure.
People need to update their old versions.
Okay, so he hinted at it earlier, but I'm kind of curious to go more into like hallucinations, being delusional. Like that is insane to me. Like crazy, but I do know it happens. Like, do you remember your first hallucination or like moment of delusion? And then what, like, have you come to expect it? Like, how do you deal with delusion and hallucination in training or in the race day?
Yeah. I do remember my first ones because they were super startling. I was in a 100-mile race in the mountains of Colorado, and there were giraffes along the side of the trail, which is not a normal animal we have here in Colorado. And these like flying, I feel like they were like flying eels or something.
Wow.
Like swooping towards my head in the sky. And I was like staring at the giraffes, really freaked out, and then ducking when these things were swooping towards my head, like full on thought they were real and with me out on this trail.
Wow.
But since then, now I can mostly recognize when it's a hallucination. And now it's just become a fun thing to like notice happening and store away in my memory for like telling my friends and family afterwards, this is what I saw up there. But yeah, those first ones really freaked me out. It's usually in the nighttime, and it's usually after basically a full day or maybe multiple days of running, where everything is just really fatigued, I think. So your brain just gets jumbled and tries to make sense of the rocks and the shadows and everything, and then you end up seeing a person playing a cello or a leopard in a hammight. It was like a colonial woman one time.
Oh, nice.
Oh, my
That
goodness.
one might have been real. She might have been a little lost.
Yeah.
So do you have like a favorite memory from a race? Like, I mean, it could be a win, or it could be maybe you were down in the dumps like really bad for a while and you're able to pull yourself out. Is there anything that kind of pops up in your mind as like that's like a really proud moment of mine?
I don't know, like, so after that 100-mile race that I dropped out of, that first attempt, I'm pretty psyched that afterwards I didn't just accept that the 100-mile distance wasn't for me, and basically immediately was making plans to try another, and which one would it be and how would I get there. Because, now I love the 100-mile distance, so I'm glad I didn't give up on it so quickly. A lot of my favorite race memories, though, are ones that I'm sharing with people, like a pacer with me that's a good friend, and we've trained together a ton, and now they're here in this race, telling me jokes, or my husband coming along, or other racers, like those miles that you get to share out in the middle of nowhere, and some of those views that you get to see are, it's cool to experience that stuff with people, to make shared memories, I think, so.
Okay, so you finish a race, you cross that finish line. What's the first things you do?
Open a beer.
I wonder, does beer have like an increased effect after running that much? Do you notice like a beer after a race versus just a beer chilling? Or it
tastes way better after.
I'm sure it does. Yeah. So was there ever like a moment where, once you did the 100-mile and you like actually completed it, was there ever a moment where you were like, you went from like you were in the marathon just running to complete to where you're like, I might be able to actually, like, I feel like I have a knack for this. Was there ever like a moment that clicked for you?
Not a specific moment, no, but I think always just wanting to get better for myself, like put together those miles more efficiently, like figure out the nutrition and the distance a little bit better each time. Just over the course of, now it's been 8 years of doing this, and and continuing to try and continuing to like experiment with different types of training or different, gear or whatever it is, which has been fun. It's like a science experiment on myself.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And then my last question, like what's next for you? Like, what are you training towards something right now?
1,000-mile race.
1,000 miles.
Yeah. This year I've got some fun about 100-mile distance races lined up. So there's one in Colorado called the Hard Rock 100, which is in the like big mountains in southwest Colorado, where the race actually gets up to 14,000 feet during a 100-mile race.
Wow.
Which is very high. Yeah. So that one will be really cool because I live in Colorado, so it'll be fun to be pushing myself out on mountains that are kind of, in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. And then there will be some more after that.
Do you have like a bucket list race, like one that you're working towards, or do you feel like you're just crushing through them? Because if 200s are new and you did that, like is there bucket? I don't know what I'm trying to ask. You know what I mean? Like, do you have one that you haven't done that? You're like, that's the one I want to crush.
Basically all of them.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, each one is unique, in the type of trail it is or the conditions you might experience. So they're all really cool challenges that I would love to experience at some point.
Well, I feel like, and because it's so new, I'm assuming that they're probably not taking place on everywhere around the world. So there's probably tons of places that they haven't even happened yet, that maybe in 5-6 years that there'll be, I don't know if there's a race in Brazil, but say, now there's a 100-mile race in Brazil. Like, that'd be super cool to be like, I was at the first one or whatever. Like, because I feel like I'm not 100% sure, but a lot of them take place in the US, right? That's like, would you say that's where most of them kind of take place at?
Europe, ultra running is really big in Europe as well.
Okay.
Yep. And it's definitely like, they're all over the world, but there's not like hundreds to choose from in every place. Like marathons, you can find so many options, or half marathons or 10Ks. I mean, there's a slew of them in every city around the world. So it hasn't gotten that widespread yet. So it'll be cool to see it grow over the years, I think.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you guys.
And then if people, they're listening to the podcast, they want to follow you on social media, how would they find you?
Yeah, on Instagram it's at Courtney Dauwalter. Twitter is at Court Dauwalter, and then you can find me on Facebook as well.
Sweet.
Courtney Dauwalter.
Awesome.
Cool.
What's the date of your marathon?
The date of my marathon is June 2nd, so we're less than a month away. So I'm
marking it down. I can't wait to hear from you.
I'll message you right after and be like, I survived. My goal, I think, is people have been asking me like, what's your time goal? For me, it's like more just to complete. I think I would love like a stretch goal, right? Complete is the main thing. That's what I'm really focused on. Stretch goal would be like under 5 hours, I think, is like. So
I love it.
I'm just trying to go for it. Honestly, man, it's been so fun because like I kind of said earlier, I'm a person that when I get into something, I just jump all the way in, and so jumping all the way into marathoning, ultramarathon, it's been so much fun because there's just so much about it, like learning about gear and like, I overpronate, so I need stability shoes and all these like little things that I never really thought of. And like one of the things with like running that a lot of people maybe don't even like focus on too much, we've talked about it a good amount, is like nutrition when you're running, like finding out what your body likes. Like there's been some things that I eat and after the run I'm like, one, I sweat a lot. Like, right, I sweat more than I feel like anybody should. So, like, the amount of, like, sodium I need to consume is a lot. So, after long runs, I'm almost always, like, not feeling well because I don't think I get enough sodium in. So, I'm, like, trying to figure all that stuff out still. But it's been interesting. It's, like you said, it's like a science experiment with your own body. You're like, okay, that thing didn't work out for me, so maybe I'll try pretzels this time. Or maybe maybe I need to just literally have some salt packets or something like that because of how much I sweat. It's been really fun. So it's been really fun to just kind of try things. Sometimes they don't work and they fail spectacularly. And sometimes you're like, that one actually kind of worked. So Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
I'm super excited.
That's so
about it.
cool.
Yeah.
I'll be cheering for you June 2nd.
Sweet. Oh, then I'm gonna crush it then.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Have a good one.
You too. See you.